Ideas about evolution. Early models of evolution. Millions of species of plants and animals and other organisms live on Earth today. Do you suppose they are exactly the same as they were when they first appeared? Or have any of them changed? A species is a group of organisms that share similar characteristics and can reproduce among themselves to produce fertile offspring. Many characteristics of a species are inherited when they are passed from parent to offspring. Change in these inherited characteristics over time is evolution. Figure 1 shows the characteristics of the camel have changed over time. Note here that 56 MYA means 56 million years ago. Figure 2, this map shows the route of Darwin's voyage on the HMS Beagle. Darwin noticed many species of the Galapagos Islands that had not seen along the coast of South America, including the marine iguana. These species, the only lizard in the world known to enter the ocean and feed on seaweed. Hypothesis of acquired characteristics. In 1809, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck proposed a hypothesis to explain how species change over time. He suggested that characteristics or traits developed during the parent organism's lifetime and inherited by its offspring. His hypothesis is called the inheritance of acquired characteristics. Scientists collect data on traits that are passed from parent to offspring. The data showed that traits developed during the parent's lifetime, such as large muscles built by hard work or exercise, are not passed on to offspring. The evidence did not support Lamarck's hypothesis. Reading check. What was Lamarck's explanation of evolution? Darwin's model of evolution. In December of 1831, the HMS Beagle sailed from England on a journey to explore the South American coast. On board was a young naturalist named Charles Darwin. During the journey, Darwin recorded observations about the plants and animals he saw. He was amazed by the variety of life on the Galapagos Islands, which are about 1,000 kilometers from the coast of Ecuador. Darwin hypothesized that the plants and animals on the Galapagos Islands originally must have come from Central and Southern America. But the islands were home to many species he had not seen in South America, including giant cactus trees, huge land tortoises, and the iguana shown here in figure 2, right here. Figure 3. Darwin observed the beak and shape of each species of Galapagos finch is related to its eating habits. Finches eating nuts and seeds have short, strong beaks for breaking hard shells. Finches that fed on insects have long, slender beaks for probing beneath the tree bark. Finches with medium-sized beaks eat a variety of both food, including seeds and insects. Darwin's observations. Darwin observed 13 species of finches on the Galapagos Islands. He noticed that all 13 species were similar except for differences in body size, beak shape, and eating habits, as shown in figure 3. He also noticed that all of the Galapagos finches species were similar to one finch species he had seen on the South American coast. Darwin reasoned that the Galapagos finches must have had to compete for food. Finches with beaks shaped that allowed them to eat available food survived longer and produced more offspring than finches without those beak shapes. After many generations, these groups of finches became separate species. Reading check. How did Darwin explain the evolution of the different species of the Galapagos finches? Natural selection. After the voyage, Charles Darwin returned to England and continued to think about his observations. He collected more evidence on inherited traits by breeding and racing pigeons. He also studied breeds of dogs and a variety of flowers. In the mid 1800s, Darwin developed a theory of evolution that accepted by most scientists today. He described his ideas in a book called On the Origin of Species, which he published in 1859. Darwin's theory. Darwin observations led many other scientists to conduct experiments on inherited characteristics. After many years, Darwin's ideas became known as the theory of evolution by natural selection. Natural selection means that organisms with traits best suited to their environment are more likely to survive and reproduce. Their traits are passed to more offspring. All living organisms produce more offspring than survive. Galapagos finches lay several eggs every few months. Darwin realized that in just a few years, several pairs of finches could produce a large population. A population is all of the individuals of a species living in the same area. Members of a large population compete for living space, food, and other resources. Those who are best able to survive are more likely to reproduce and pass on their traits to the next generation. The principle that describes how natural selection works are listed in Table 1. Over time, new data was gathered and reported. Changes were made to Darwin's original ideas about evolution by natural selection. His theory remains one of the most important ideas in the study of life science. Variation and adaptation. Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection emphasizes the differences among individuals of a species. These differences are called variations. A variation is an inherited trait that makes an individual different from other members of its species. Variations result from permanent changes or mutations in an organism's genes. Some genes changes produce small variations, such as differences in shape of human hairlines. Other genes change produces large variations, such as an albino squirrel in a population of gray squirrels, or fruit without seeds. Over time, more and more individuals of the species might inherit these variations. If individuals with these variations continue to survive and reproduce over many generations, a new species can evolve. It may take hundreds, thousands, or millions of generations for a new species to evolve. Some variations are more helpful than others. An adaptation is a variation that makes an organism better suited to its environment. The variation that results in an adaptation can involve an organism's color, shape, behavior, or chemical makeup. Camouflage is an adaptation. Camouflage organisms, like the one shown in Figure 4, blends into its environment and is more likely to survive and reproduce. Figure 4. Variations that provide an advantage tend to increase in population over time. Variations that result in disadvantages tend to decrease in population over time. This is camouflaged organism here. Infer how the coloration gives a scorpion fish a survival advantage. Albinism prevents an organism from blending into its environment. This organism is not blending in. Changes in the sources of genes. Over time, the genetic makeup of a species might change in its appearance. For example, as the genetic makeup of a species of seed-eating Galapagos finches change, so do the size and shape of its beak. Many kinds of environmental factors help bring about changes. When individuals of the same species move into or in or out of an area, they might bring in or remove genes and variations. Suppose a family from another country moves into your neighborhood. They might bring different foods, customs, and ways of speaking with them. In a similar way, when a new individual enters an existing population, they can bring in different genes and variations. Geographic isolation. Sometimes mountains, lakes, or other geological features isolate a small number of individuals from the rest of the population. Over several generations, variations that do not exist in larger populations might begin to become more common in an isolated population. Also, gene mutations can occur that can add variations to populations. Over time, the two populations can become so different that they no longer can breed with each other. The two populations of rabbits shown in Figure 5 have been geographically isolated from each other for thousands of generations. Figure 5. About 600 years ago, European rabbits were introduced to the Canary Islands from a visiting Portuguese ship. The Canary Islands are in the Atlantic Ocean off the northwest coast of Africa. Over time, the Canary Island rabbits became separate species. European rabbits here, Canary Island rabbits here. Speed of evolution. Scientists do not agree on how quickly evolution occurs. Many scientists hypothesize that evolution occurred slowly, perhaps even over tens or hundreds of millions of years. Other scientists hypothesize that evolution can occur quickly. Most scientists agree that evidence supports both these models. Gradualism. Darwin hypothesized that evolution takes place slowly. The model that describes evolution as a slow, ongoing process by which one species changes into another species is known as gradualism. According to the gradualism model, a continuing series of mutations and variations over time will result in a new species. Look back at Figure 1, which shows the evolution of a camel over tens of millions of years. Fossil evidence shows a series of intermediate forms that indicate a gradual change from its earliest camel species to today's species. Back on Figure 1. Earliest species here, today's species down here. Punctuated equilibrium. Gradualism does not explain the evolution of all species. For some species, the fossil record shows few intermediate forms. One species suddenly changes to another. According to the punctuated equilibrium model, rapid evolution comes about when the mutation of a few genes results in the appearance of a new species over a relatively short period of time. The fossil record gives examples of this type of evolution, as you can see in Figure 6. Figure 6 is right here. The hypothesis of evolution of bears illustrates a punctuated equilibrium model of evolution from red panda to brown bear. Punctuated equilibrium today. Evolution by punctuated equilibrium model can occur over a few thousand or millions of years, and sometimes even faster. For example, many bacteria have changed in a few decades. The antibiotic penicillin originally came from a fungus shown in Figure 7, but many bacteria species that were once easily killed by penicillin no longer are harmed by it. These bacteria have developed resistance to the drug. Penicillin has been used since 1943. Just 4 years later, 1947, a species of bacteria that cause pneumonia and other infections already had developed a resistance to the drug. By the 1990s, several disease-producing bacteria had become resistant to penicillin and many other antibiotics. How do the penicillin-resistant bacteria evolve so quickly? As in any population, some organisms have variations and others have survived unfavorable living conditions when other organisms cannot. When penicillin was used to kill bacteria, those with penicillin-resistant variations survived, reproduced, and passed on this trait to their offspring. Over a period of time, this bacteria population became penicillin-resistant. And we have our review questions down here. And this has been Section 1 of Ideas about Evolution. My name is Mr. Ruby. I hope you enjoy this video.